welcome to Women at Google. We have the extraordinary Eve Ensler here today. Eve is a playwright, an actress, an activist, and an amazing world leader. She has many books, and her most recent book is this incredible book, I Am an Emotional Creature, The Secret Life of Girls Around the World. And I have great news that they just got a call that 8 days in, it just hit the New York Times bestseller list. So, yay, go Eve. Eve has really pioneered stopping violence and starting to help us stop wasting talent. And so we're going to have a conversation. I want to play one. You guys all know the Search On campaign that Google's been running. And we had that Super Bowl ad. It's the one called Parisian Love. But I don't know if anyone's seen the high school girl one. So I wanted to play it. So, starting a robotics club, near and dear to our hearts at Google. Welcome, Eve Ensler.
Hi. Oh, I just punched myself with the microphone.
So I don't know, let's start with high school girls. Talk about the book. I mean, with the Vagina Monologues, people tell you stories. You've been all around the world and people tell you things. And you were able to put that together and bring that to everybody. And in this case, you've taken stories you've heard and changed it into a fictionalized version. Is that right? So talk a little bit.
Well, the Vagina Monologue was a fictional version. I don't want anybody, they were not interviews. I think people always misunderstood that. I listen to people, I watch, I pay attention, and then I create fiction out of those things, you know. So, but this particular book, I've had a great opportunity over the last 12 years with V-Day to travel the world, probably been in about 60 countries, and I've gotten to meet amazing girls everywhere. And I think in the process of this journey, I discovered that there were themes across the planet that were really linking girls. And those themes are the reason I ended up writing this book. And one of those themes is, it seems to me that it doesn't matter where you're a girl, there is a cultural mandate or a societal mandate or a familiar mandate or a fashion mandate to please somebody. And that the verb of girls is, for the most part, to please in one way or another. And it shows up in every different culture in a completely different way. I mean, you have cultures where getting purple Uggs is the way you please. And if you buy the perfect pair of purple Uggs, you will be accepted by the tribe, and you won't be alienated and outside. And if you don't buy the purple Uggs, you will be destroyed. And I've met those girls who didn't get the purple Uggs because they couldn't afford the purple Uggs, and they were outsiders, and they were, quote, nobody. Or there's mandate in places, well, Beverly Hills or suburbs, where if you are really, 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 really skinny, and you look like a rendition of Barbie, you will be in, and then you go across the planet, and we have female genital mutilation. If you have your clitoris cut, you are part of a tradition, and that will get you inside the tribe and keep you in the tribe. And then you go to Palestine, where sometimes being a suicide bomber will keep you in the tribe. And then you go to Israel, where joining the army. I mean, it just seems like every single culture has a particular prescription for how girls are supposed to behave, what they're supposed to do. And if you do that, you'll be accepted and loved. And if you don't, you'll be exiled. And so it just became this amazing kind of collage of stories where I would hear girls talking about various ways that they were either resisting those mandates, capitulating and feeling bad about themselves, capitulating and being lost, or absolutely refusing and living lives as refusers and outsiders. And that was kind of the basis of the book. And I think the other thing that I've seen, and certainly know as myself as a teenage girl, because I really do feel I'm about 15, even though I'm dressed in this body, and I look older, I think, but I really feel that I'm a teenage girl, is, you know, when I was younger, people were always telling me, you're too emotional, you're too intense, you're too dramatic, you're too alive, you're too in my face, you're too. And I think that's true for a lot of us. And I don't think it's just girls, by the way. I think boys, from the time they're born, are taught, you know, you're too emotional, you're too weepy, you're too sensitive, you know, you're too, you take things too seriously. And I think for boys, it gets cut off at a much earlier point. But I think for girls, they're allowed to go a little longer, and then they begin to feel bad about their level of passion and their level of intensity and their level of emotionality. And I think this book is really a call for girls and for the girl in all of us to reign and to be supreme, and for us to really be our emotional, authentic, outrageous, true selves. And you know, I was just at a luncheon before here where a group of women were talking about the fact that they were just all beginning to talk how they've always been emotional, and their whole lives people told them they were too emotional, and now they were going to be emotional again, and they had it, and it's just funny when it begins to get uncapped what begins to get released, you know.
It's so exciting. I think, you know, it's funny because, I don't know, a couple years ago, I think it was a year ago, we got interviewed. Somebody thought that there was a connection, which it turned out there was, between Google and V-Day, and because we were both 10 years old. Right. And so I think one of the things I'm excited about technology is sort of helping, we're seeing it all over the world, and how individuals are able to express themselves, whether it's things going on in Iran or whatever. So I'm excited for the possibility for women and girls through technology, allowing people to interconnect to each other. And whether it's in a non-technology setting like this lunch, and sort of hearing these stories and re-empowering yourself to be emotional or be however you are, or whether it's through technical places that you get. There we go.
Well, I also think, you know, in terms of Google and V-Day, you know, V-Day V stands for vagina, and it stands for victory over violence, and it stands for Valentine's Day, but it also stands for virtual. I mean, V-Day is our core is a virtual movement. We don't have an office. We only exist in virtual space and in your heart and minds and vaginas of people all over the world, and vagina-friendly men, I might add. And what I've really seen is how quickly this movement has spread in 12 years, which would never have happened without the internet. I mean, you know, 12 years ago, there was one event in New York City. This year, there are 1,800 places doing 5,000 events in 130 countries. Now that happened because one person, you know, it's vagina madness. It's spreading all over the planet. And you know, and I was just in UC Irvine on Sunday night, and when they started doing V-Days there, the vagina monologues, they were in one little room. They couldn't put it in the newspaper. People were like, please go away. And when I was there Sunday night, there were 1,200 people in a near stadium. It was the pick of the week. It was totally diverse. It was every age, every ethnic group, every size, every shape, tons of men. And I thought, you know, the movement's growing. We're really, 12 years later, vaginas have infiltrated everywhere. And
it's true. It's a good thing. One of the things that's been exciting to watch in the technology industry is actually, if you go to vaginas infiltrating everywhere, if you look at the decades of the computer industry, you can see women coming in more and more into the companies. And I think at Google we have a lot of women in leadership. And I think, you know, if you look, say, a decade earlier at Apple or Microsoft, maybe 2 decades earlier, they have less. You know, and you look to Facebook, who's younger than us, and they have more Twitter, they have more. So the boys are always there, but the women are there too now. So yeah, that's very exciting to watch. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the things you were saying at 10 India. And what I think is sort of the gift of girls, and the gift of your inner girl in a way. And you were talking about the girl gene,
yeah,
or the girl cells,
well,
the girl cells that need to infiltrate everybody.
Yeah. Well, you know, I still have no idea why Ted keeps inviting me back to speak, because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a physicist, I'm not an astronomer, and I keep going, okay, vagina's outer space. Okay, I'm just trying to make the connections, you know. But whenever I go, and if you've ever spoken to Ted or think about speaking at TED, it's really intimidating because you think, okay, these are the smartest people in the world, and what am I doing here? You know, and so I decided for my TED India speech that I was going to be really like scientific, and I was going to think about cells and genes. And so I devised this whole talk on the girl cell, and that we all have girl cells inside of us. And it really was a fantastically exciting thing to begin to work on, because I started to think about the fact that we all really do have girl cells, and boys and women, and I think sometimes in men it's more developed the girl cell than it is in women. I think we all have our, but I started to think like, what is a girl cell and what are the characteristics of girl cells? And I was thinking compassion, passion, intuition, wildness, outrage, revolution. I was just going through all that, and so I gave this talk at TED just about how each of us have a girl cell, and how in men, I think this tyranny of patriarchy and the tyranny of masculinity has in some ways really hurt men far more than it's hurt women. Because I think, you know, to grow up a boy means that you can express your tenderness, and that to some degree you learn very early on you have to disassociate from your heart, and that you can't ever be lost, and you can't not know things, and you can't ask for directions, and you can't, like, you always have to be on. And I think so many boys that I've met and men I've met over my travels, the things men have told me just about the legacy of not being able to be tender, and the legacy of not being able to be lost and have time, has really hurt them and damaged them. And so when I gave this talk at TED, I was talking about all of us releasing our, and there's a lot of men at TED, so I had no idea how this talk was going to be received. It was a little nerve-wracking. And at the end, it was amazing to see how many men came up to me, and particularly Indian men who were like, my inner girl thanks you, my inner girl thanks you, you know, and they were just so grateful. And one man said, you know, my whole life, I tell my wife we have to have boys, and I'm going home to make 4 girls. We're going to have girls, we're going to have lots of girls. And you know, even the Karmapa, you know, who is the new, the next in line potential Dalai Lama, who is this incredibly beautiful man, was telling me, you know, how difficult it is in Buddhism even to honor monks and nuns equally, and to honor the feminine, and for boys and men to honor the feminine. And we had this private meeting, and we just had a long talk about it. And I just got so excited by the response of men to this idea. And now wherever I go, men are stopping me and going, I'm emotional, and I was emotional yesterday. And, you know, and in a way, you know, I'm being light about it. But I think when we are all allowed to feel, to be connected to our hearts. You know, I spent a lot of time in the Congo, and we have a massive campaign there because in the Congo, in Eastern Congo, the worst atrocities in the world are happening to women in the world. You know, and the war, for those of you who don't know it, in the Congo has been raging for 12 years. 6 million people have died. 6 million people. It's essentially an economic war because the Congo is one of the richest in minerals countries in Africa, and they have coltan, which goes into our cell phones and our PlayStations, and they have copper and tin and gold. And so many of the Western countries use militias that get those minerals out of the mines, and then they take them to the West, and we are all served in our luxurious items, you know, by those minerals. But the way the militias get to take over villages is they use rape and they use sexual torture. And they go into villages and they rape very little girls, 6-month-old babies, 8-year-old girls, 80-year-old women. They torture, they rape women in front of their husbands. They rape daughters and force husband and fathers to rape their daughters, and brothers to rape their mothers. And they do horrible, horrible acts of crimes that you just can't even imagine. And all of that serves to destroy the community and break up the family and absolutely destroy the infrastructure of the community, so that people then flee, and then the militias take over the mines. And so all of us are a part of this same global story. And I've spent a lot of time there in the last 3 years. I've been there a lot. We're doing a huge campaign, which I'll tell you more about. And I've interviewed lots and lots of women, and I've heard stories ranging from 8-year-old girls who've been raped by so many men, they have holes inside them where their pee just falls out, or 80-year-old women who can't lift their leg because it was taken over their head when they were raped by 7 men, or, you know, women who have had their babies cut out and been forced to eat them. The stories are literally beyond belief. And I think to myself, how can men do this? Like, what happens to a man? And by the way, I don't think all men do this. I think a small portion of men do this. But how does any man do that? And the answer is, somewhere along the way, a man got separated from himself, got disassociated from his heart, got separated from his feelings, forgot about his mother, forgot to cherish his mother and honor his mother and love his mother. And that process is patriarchy. How do we train boys to go and kill? And how do we train soldiers to go and kill? And what is that process about? And how are most boys brought up on some level to be soldiers? Really, that same process.
I think this point is really important because the boys are as much, the women, the girls are victims, but the boys are victims. There's, in the gay world, there was a young man murdered 2 years ago in Orange County, 15-year-old boy named Lawrence King, and he was murdered for being gay. And I think he was shot by a friend a guy from school. And the tragedy is actually, of course, him, but also the other kid. The other kid is now being tried as an adult. He's going to go to prison. He's going to be in prison for 25 years. And the system failed both of them.
Exactly.
Both of them failed the kid who shot in not understanding bullying and difference and equality, and it of course failed the kid who was killed. So
and also, usually people who are afraid of being gay or who are attacking gay people are afraid of their own femininity and their own vulnerability and their own sensitivity because no one's given them permission to honor their hearts and honor their tenderness. And you just see it kind of getting passed down and passed down and passed down. And I think, the more I'm in this movement, and I've been doing this work now for a very long time, trying to end violence against women and girls, like we can't do this without boys and men. It's impossible. We're not raping ourselves, unless there's a participation and full participation of men and boys in this campaign and in this work. It will never end. And I constantly am asking, where are the good men? Because there's tons of them. Why aren't they standing up to make violence against women their issue? Why aren't they honoring their sisters and their girlfriends and their mothers and their daughters and their aunts and all the people in their families? And I think when men and boys really start committing themselves to this, it will change overnight. It will change overnight. But part of it is, how do men risk leaving the kind of sanctitude of masculinity where they have to forfeit their identities and their security to stand up against this violence? And I can only share that when I first started talking about vaginas, it wasn't like everybody was happy about it. It wasn't like, oh, goody, the vaginas are here. That never happened, And in a way, I think for men to stand up, it requires a similar kind of, I'm going to do it, I'm going to be brave, and then trust that the rest of the men are going to follow.
I think it's extraordinary how, if you can get, how do we engage people and how do we pull them over? I wanted to stay with Congo. So we have a small team going to join a UN group that's going to be in Eastern Congo in about 2 weeks. And our initial focus is going to be related to mapping and geo things that we're particularly skilled at. But part of it is also to learn more about what's going on. You guys are doing extraordinary work in the City of Joy, which you've created. So tell people about Pansy Hospital and City of Joy and what might happen. And by the way, we've put $50,000 into helping these guys build a tech center. And if anyone wants to help me, we've got to help them do it.
No, we're really excited.
Ready for the opening in May.
And grateful. Well, we've been working in the Congo now with women on the ground and local groups on the ground because the way V-Day works is we never ever, V-Day is virtual and we're everywhere, so it would be hard for us to go into anywhere when we don't really exist in the first place. But there is a kind of central body, of people. And the way we work is that we never go into a place and suggest to anybody what they're supposed to do. First of all, it works that people do the vagina monologues all over the world. They come, they pick it, they do it, and then they translate it into their language, into their culture. But in terms of supporting people, we support the work that's going on the ground, and we find resources. We don't direct people what to do. We don't determine their destinies. We know that women on the ground know how to change their lives. They know what they need to do. They just don't have the resources to do it. So in the Congo, when I first went to the Congo and spent time there interviewing women, and I did a piece for Glamour, and I just kind of was, Well, to be honest, I was completely shattered. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, going to the Congo. And I went because of a man named Dr. Denis Mukwege, who is a doctor and the director of the Pansy Hospital in Bukavu. He's an extraordinary human being. He's devoted his life to saving women who are being raped and tortured in the war. He's sewing up women's vaginas as fast as the militias are ripping them apart. And at any given time, there are 300 women at Pansy Hospital. Most of them have fistula, which is a hole between your vagina and your rectum, or your vagina and your bladder. And a lot of these women have fistula because so many things have been shoved inside them. Sticks and bayonets and many, many penises, and they have absolutely been ripped apart. And I actually saw a fistula operation because I wanted to see what it looked like, and it's like literally a hole in your soul. It looks like somebody has punctured a hole in your soul. And there are many people at Pansy with fistula at any given time, so when you have it, you can't hold your pee or your poop. And so you have a world of 300 women who are just peeing on themselves. It's like a very bizarre Doris Lessing novel, and you just can't even believe you're witnessing such a thing in the year 2010. It's beyond belief. But Dr. Mukwege has been there, and he works. He has 12 operations a day. He is there with the women. They name their babies after him because he's one of the most extraordinary people. And when we went, we said, what do women need? Like, what can V-Day do? And after women have been raped, it's very hard for women to go back to their villages because they're exiled and they're stigmatized and they're no longer welcome. And what's happening to many women is they're sent back to their communities and then they're re-raped. So Dr. Mukwege may do 9 operations on a woman to fix fistula, and then she gets sent home and she's raped again. And then the fistula never works, then the operation never works. So we decided we would open a place called the City of Joy, and we interviewed and worked with a lot of women on the ground. And it's an amazing place. And what it's going to be is essentially a place, a literal place, but a metaphor, a catalyst, a decision. There'll be 100 women at any given time who will stay for 6 months. All of them will be survivors of gender violence. They will be fed, they will be housed, they will be supported. They will have healing therapy. They will have theater and arts and dance. They will learn their rights. They will have literacy training. They will get an economic empowerment tool, something that the City of Joy creates. There's a radio station where they'll learn to be advocates on their own behalf. There'll be ways that they fight their own and prosecute their own cases. There's amazing fields where women will plow and cultivate and grow crops, which they can then take seeds from and bring, and hopefully we'll have lots of goats, and they'll have baby goats that they can bring back to their communities. The only thing you have to agree to come to the City of Joy is that you will be a leader and you will pass on what you're given. And you have to sign that when you come. So when you leave after 6 months, there'll be centers in your own community that we set up, and you'll have a posse that you go back with, and you'll pass it on to the women in your community, and we'll begin to turn pain to power. And the idea is really to create a cadre of women leaders. In 5 years, we'll have 1,000 women leaders. And those women will be the people who create the revolution, not the violent revolution, the soft revolution in the Congo that brings about radical change for the whole country. And you know, I was just there in December, and first of all, it's the most beautiful place in the world. It really is extraordinary. And the building crew, about 180 builder, and the woman who's the director there is this amazing woman named Christine Schuler-Describer, who is a force of nature. And she told them that there had to be 1/3 of the building crew had to be women. And women have never been on construction crew ever in the Congo. And when I got there, there were 60 women dancing across the fields with 90 pounds of cement buckets on their head, screaming and dancing. They were so happy to be employed, to have a job, to be building a city which was going to liberate and free women.
It's an extraordinary vision.
And now they're going to have computers and a whole tech center from Google.
But we really wanted to contribute to the City of Joy, and we wanted them to be able to tell their stories online and blog and learn, you know, about the web, and then also, you know, perhaps run a side internet cafe there or whatever they want to do.
We're up
for helping them in any way. I want to open it up for questions to people, so you can start thinking about questions.
So what kind of support are you getting from the men of the Congo for this?
This is a very good question. Well, surprisingly, a lot of support. We have been doing a lot of the campaign does a lot of things as well as the City of Joy. And over 3 years, we've been training an enormous amount of activists, men and women, to spread the news about ending sexual violence and women's rights. And in Goma and Kinshasa and in Bukavu, the movement is really growing. I was actually in Kinshasa a few months ago when women did the first production of the Vagina Monologues there. And it was amazing. And what was amazing is the next day, all these male activists who've been working for months came and talked about their feelings after seeing the Vagina Monologues. And I mean, they were more radical than most people I've ever met in my life, and they were saying, "I had no idea. I didn't know you could look at. I didn't know you could look at my wife's vagina. I'm going to go home and look at it. I didn't know, like, there's so many things I learned. I'm going to be a much better lover." And they were so enthusiastic, and so we have a lot of trained male activists who are really fighting to bring about the the V Men's movement there, which is the new men's parallel or integrated movement in V-Day. And then I've seen, like over the last year, we did these Breaking the Silence events where women survivors came forward and told their stories in Kinshasa and Goma and Bukavu to hundreds. And there were many, many men at those events. And men were literally sobbing and wailing over what happened. And now a lot of those men are really beginning to work with us to be part of this movement. And Dr. Mukwege is the godfather of the V-Men's movement, and we gave him a huge award last year at the Superdome when we did the 10th anniversary in front of 18,000 people. So he is now the symbol of the V-Men's movement around the world. And I think more and more men are getting involved in what we're doing in a very beautiful way.
So one of the things, questions, can you connect, you've connected some of the violence in Congo not only through the technology, but also just the behavior. And how when the behavior ramps up in a certain place, how it makes other things okay. And I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about why this is so important to go help the women and the men there, but also why it's important on a global level.
Well, people always, I was just at a luncheon and someone said, like, what do you say when people say, why the Congo? You know, there's so much happening in our own communities. And one thing I've seen, by the way, is that in all the V-Days that are working locally to stop violence in Palo Alto or, you know, LA or Alabama or Manila, working for the women of Congo is really powerful for them as well. Because when you have solidarity outside your community, it gives you a reflection on what's going on in your own community in a whole different way. For me, I say this, and I say this really strongly, the worst violence in the world towards women is going on in the Congo. It is beyond anything we can rightly imagine or should ever imagine. And if we as human society give permission to this, we basically license this kind of behavior everywhere. We are basically saying we're okay with it. And what's interesting and horrifying is to see the spread of it, like in Guinea this year or in the post-election riots in Kenya or in Zimbabwe. We're seeing rape now being used more and more as a tool of oppression and control and war. And I think as countries get poorer and poorer and have fewer resources to fight wars with, if we don't end violence against women as a tactic and rape as a tactic of war, we will begin to see that women's bodies are the landscapes on which wars will be fought and girls will be fought. So we must stop it in the Congo if we're going to stop the spread of it. But also, the Congo is the heart of Africa. If you look at the map of Africa, it's the heart. And to some degree, Africa is very much the heart of the world. So women are in the heart of the heart of the heart. And if the heart of Africa isn't pumping blood and isn't pumping energy through the arteries and through the veins of the rest of Africa, Africa is dying and Africa is suffering and will continue to suffer. So I feel, and I've had an incredible life in the last 12 years. I've been everywhere in the world, and usually the rape mines of the world, whether it's Haiti or Afghanistan or Bosnia or Kosovo, I've seen pretty horrific things. I really believe if we can end violence against women and girls in the Congo, we can end it everywhere, because it's the worst. And if we can create a template there for transformation and change, we can use that template everywhere. So I'm saying to everybody right now, let's make Congo the project. Let's say we will serve the women of Congo, not tell them what to do, not do further colonization where we go in and intervene and direct them and use them and, as they have been forever, because we know the colonization that occurred through the Belgians in the Congo was one of the worst anywhere in Africa. and the horrible history that has ensued is reflected and grows out of that colonization. I'm talking about allowing women to have their destinies and to have their vision and to have their voices and serving them and finding the resources to support them coming into their power and leadership so they can own the minerals and own their country and own their bodies. And I think we can do that. That's something that really can happen if we all put our minds and will. Look, if you can Google, come on. I mean, I look at Google. I still don't have any idea how Google exists or what it is or where people are. Do people just sit in little rooms and put this information in? I have no idea how it works, right? But if we can Google, for God's sakes, we can end violence against women and girls in the Congo, you know? And I mean, really, I mean, look how, and I sometimes think, how is it that we have so much attention to creating apps? Do you know, and I didn't know much about apps until last night, and I was just like, oh my God, there's a reason I didn't go into app world, because you just never get out. But I look at things like apps, and I think the attention we have for that, why don't we have attention for stopping the cruelty and atrocities and heinous behavior that is being perpetuated as we get to have our apps? And I think if all of us really join and make the focus the Congo and put our attention there, we really can, we absolutely can shift what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, so last time you were here, you talked about a slightly different topic, which was the safe house that you had actually built. And you gave a specific example of certain donations were made to buy a van that could transport women to and from the safe house. And I'm not sure if it was in Sudan. I don't believe it.
No, Kenya.
Okay, so one, I wanted to get an update on that, and this maybe is and my personal opinion after hearing everything you say about the Congo is violence against women has happened since the beginning of time. It's always been a method of warfare, and it's kind of a natural human instinct. I mean, I don't mean it that way, but it's something that's kind of been going on since the beginning of time, and so I guess I'm more pessimistic about being able to stop that in the Congo or anywhere. And I know it also happens against men increasingly in the same places. So things like stopping female circumcision seem like, to me, something that's actually a much more tractable problem to try to solve. So, I mean, I think it's great to try in the Congo as well, but it's just much harder to fight that as opposed to the circumcision thing, which is a lot more dealing with ignorance and social mores in those regions that seem a little bit more changeable. So I wanted your opinion if you agree on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to address your second part of that first. You know, it's interesting when people say that violence has always been, it's a natural thing, which I find completely unnatural, actually, just for the record. But, you know, I'm sure there was a time when people said people will always be reading on a tablet, and that's really natural. Right, and then people said, oh, they're reading in books. That's really natural. And now we have computers, and that seems really natural. Now, why do we have the imagination to perceive and foresee and look out and see an evolution in things like computers and online and virtual reality, but we don't have the imagination to see an end to violence? And I think it's something to really examine in ourselves. Why do we assume that the worst of people will continue forever, right? I mean, it's just something I urge us all to consider, because I think there's a way we're enslaved by our refusal to have a bigger vision. You know, we once did an exercise in V-Day where we asked people one year to say, what would your life be like if there were no violence towards women? And it was fascinating. I did it in a prison group, and women said, I can't do this. I won't do this. I was like, excuse me? They were like, first of all, I can't even imagine it, and just to imagine it really upsets me. And I said, it upsets you to imagine it. And it was upsetting because so much of their lives had been about violence, that just to open the door to a time when they would be safe and free and protected and could walk in the world where they wanted to go and wear what they wanted to do and do, it was almost unbearable. So I want us to all dare to go into the unbearable, to imagine what it would be like to live in a world without violence. Just even on a daily basis, take an hour, take 10 minutes, takes 5 minutes. You're walking down the street and there's no more violence. What are you doing? I'm naked. I'm naked all the time, and I don't care because no one's bothering me. You know, no one's harassing me. I don't wear clothes. Why would we wear clothes? The only reason we wear clothes is because people would hurt us, right? You just begin to think, you know, would we have doormen? No, gone. No more doormen. Would they do something else? they'd probably do something happy and joyful. But I mean, just to start looking at how our life is based and predicated on attack. And I think, so that's number one. Number two, I'm really happy to report that in Kenya, we were just there in August, and Agnes is a superhero. Agnes Pereyo is the woman who has been for years, she was cut as a girl, female genitally mutilated as a girl, and decided that she would devote her life to ending the practice. And she's a Maasai woman, and she's brilliant and strategic and clever and loving and powerful. And she created an alternative ritual where girls come of age without the cut. And she walked through the Rift Valley for years and years with this box and a female torso. And the torso had vaginal replacement parts. And she would show people what a healthy vagina looked like and what a mutilated vagina looked like. And she would teach girls and boys and mothers and fathers. And in the years that she walked, she saved 1,500 girls from being cut. And when we met her, I was like, okay, this is the woman we're going to support. I said, how can we help you? And she said, give us money and I'll buy a Jeep and I can get around a lot faster. So for the first year, she reached, I think, 4,500 girls. And then we said, what else could we do? And she said, well, if you give me money, I could open a house. And girls could run away. They'd be protected. They wouldn't be cut. They wouldn't be forced into marriage with an old man, and they'd be able to go to school. So 7 years ago, she opened the first safe house. It's been wildly successful. She has saved many, many girls from the cut. They're in school, and they've been reconciled with their own families. And this year, she opened the second house in a place called Sekutiak. It's a very remote village. It was very difficult to build a house, but she was so clever. She worked with another NGO that works on water, and they built her a well. And right now in Kenya, there's a serious drought. And she, in Sekutiak, has the only water. So guess what? If you want water, you don't cut your daughter, right? And so now, that's because, yeah. Yeah. And so when I was at the safe house and we had the ceremony, it was packed with men who had all brought their daughters to the house to support them, to go through the ceremony without the cut. And we're very happy because they were getting water. And so we're learning how to integrate these things and bring, ecological needs and basic survival needs together with ending that tradition. I'll tell you one story. When I was there was a girl named Jacqueline, and it's actually in the book, a little bit of her story, but then I embellished and invented a lot of it. But she was 14. Her sisters had been cut. She was in a Maasai family, very tight community. The cows were dying because of the drought. She knew things were getting bad. She heard her father talking to a man who was missing an eye, an old man. She knew she was going to be sold. She knew she was going to be cut. She knew she wouldn't go to school, and she ran away. She had heard about our house. She ran for 2 days. She got there. She slept with the hyenas. She was really scared. When she got there, Agnes greeted her. She stayed for a year. She went to school. Her whole life changed. She learned her rights. She became this strong, fierce girl. And I was in the hut, we all were, when she was brought back for the reconciliation with her father. And it was one of the most emotional things I've ever seen. The whole family, the 4 wives of her father and her mother, all wept. Her mother had been beaten because she stood up for her and went to the elders. The father wept. He said she'd become an amazing girl. He accepted her back, and then he looked at her sisters and said, I will not cut you. And then the whole Maasai community took the day off from the market and celebrated her return. It was gorgeous. So we're having incredibly good luck, and we've just envisioned a 10-year plan where Agnes will create more houses and a radio station and this whole amazing plan. And I hope in 10 years we'll see the end of FGM in Maasai land. So yes, I think it is easier to end that tradition than it is to end rape, but I don't think it's impossible to end rape. And I urge you to just go there in spite of your own pessimism.
I think, part of this, being willing to imagine, sort of in another area, Professor Yunus, the inventor of the Grameen microloans and just brilliant Nobel Prize winner, he actually wants there to be a poverty museum by 2030. And he totally believes it's possible because he thought a little bit about how do you take banking, which is a big industry, and include the poor so that everybody gets to participate. It's like an airline has first class, business class, economy. Why can't every business, have something where everyone can participate. So it's not exactly related, but in that way, can you imagine if the only place you could see poverty is in a museum? And so I think in the same way, maybe it's sort of an extraordinary thing to think about, but I think memes happen. There was a New York Times piece last summer about the book Half the Sky and some of the things going on with sort of how we're thinking about women and girls and half the talent in the world and how we're including people who have not been included across a lot of different boundaries in the past. And I think that a lot of people in that article, the thesis was that in the 19th century, the vast majority of people came to understand that slavery was wrong, and that became a meme that we understood as a fundamental meme. And then in the 20th century, totalitarianism and the idea of democracy, and it became sort of a general meme that moved into many, many parts of the world. And they were theorizing that in the 21st century, that this idea of gender apartheid goes away, that gender equality comes. And I think there's a lot to that. And I actually think that many things contribute, and actually technology has an extraordinary impact on that, because it's interconnecting people. So the little girl in Kenya didn't know she had power until she had information that there was a safe house to run to. And then she could go there, and her sisters could go there, and then their friends could go. And so with that information, and so the technology brings the information, it's the plumbing of information and community.
And I also think movements do it. Like Nicholas Kristof and Half the Sky didn't just happen. That we've been working for years and years and years and years in a women's movement, and that book is now visible, but a lot of work happened before that book happened, And I think we don't even know what seeds we're planting when we're activists. I ran into a woman the other night who is now the head of a city council who was a V-Day activist for years, and I ran into another woman who's become this, and you don't even know what saying the word vagina is going to do. Like what door it's going to open up. I'll tell you a really funny story. I was once in I'm sorry, you want to ask your question, but I was once in Bulgaria, and we had this meeting of women in all of Eastern Europe, and they all came from all across the Balkans, all across Eastern Europe, and the woman who was running it decided the way everyone was going to introduce themselves was by saying vagina in their own native languages. And it was fascinating. It was like this one, pichka and puchka and pupkine. And this woman from Macedonia, she was a gypsy woman and very much a minority, and just the fact that she was there was a miracle, and she very, very traditional community. She stood up and was like, okay, and couldn't do it and sat down, and stood up again and went and sat down. And finally she just went, ninja, ninja. And for the rest of the weekend, all anybody did was walk around going, ninja, right? That so radicalized her, just doing that she went back to her community, and they had this really horrific tradition that on the marriage night, the husband's father could sleep with his bride to see if she was a virgin, or that she would lose her virginity and the whole community would come and check her sheets, right? And she was horrified this, and she had been raped actually on her wedding night. So she went home after that, and she created a theater piece called The Gypsy Virgin Bride, which she then toured all through the gypsy communities, and she literally ended the tradition. She literally ended. So you think, who knows what door it's going to open up. And when you suddenly realize you have power and you have rights and your anger arrives and your passion arrives, and we don't even know how powerful we are. We don't have a clue how powerful we are. Sorry.
I was just going to ask what we can do to help, what we as individuals here can also do to help. If we have, let's say, a few hours a week, or is there a cause you want us to donate to? Point us in the right direction.
And think about multiple things. Think about things you individuals could do, but think about things like with all our crazy teammates.
Yeah.
There's 20,000 Googlers all over the world.
Wow.
And
20,000.
there's people in YouTube world, phenomenal people all around the world who could help too.
Well, I've always felt that you should do a V-Day at Google. I've been saying this for years, that the women at Google should put on a production of the Vagina Monologues and raise a lot of money for V-Day. That's what I think you should do. You should do a major production, get all kinds of people who would be in the cast, produce it, do it in some incredible space here for the whole community, and raise a lot of money for the movement. That would be the greatest thing you could do. Because then you'd be in the play, you'd be talking vaginas at Google, and virtual. And we could do a whole virtual V for vagina, merging of the two. And if you do it this next year, men can be part of it because there's going to be this whole new men's piece that will be coming out, so we can bring that in. So that's one.
Okay.
And I'd love to see Megan doing the moans myself. You're blushing. But if you go online too, there's many things you can do. I'll tell you another fantasy I have. We have something called the Congo Wall, where people from all over the world go on and they sign up and write messages to the women of Congo. Now it has a couple of thousand people. I would like 1 million people on the wall. If you would all work with us to get millions of people to sign up for the women of Congo, so we could have 1 million people on the wall supporting the women of Congo, that would be an awesome thing. And I know you all know how to do that and could figure out a way to do that, so we would be greatly. Raise money, tell the stories wherever you can, spread V girls, read the books, carry the message, be your emotional, powerful selves.
So my question is, you just mentioned getting men more involved in the movement. I'd love to hear more about that, and particularly how you're going to do it in a way that's really going to encourage them to fight for the cause and not alienate them. Because one of the kind of concerns with talking about the vagina monologues and using the V word is that it can make men very uncomfortable and maybe feel a little bit alienated. So how do you get them to really rally around this cause in a way that's going to get your average man on the street to feel comfortable?
Well, I want to say that many men have come to the vagina monologues and are actually very attracted to vaginas and aren't alienated by them, just for the record. But I've always felt that when men create this movement, they'll bring in other men. I don't think women can convince men to care about violence against women. I think men can. And what's happened over the last year is that a group of men got together and met a lot of other men and decided they would launch something called V-Men. So what they've done this year is they've launched this pilot project called 10 Ways to Be a Man. And there are workshops, 100 places signed up this year to do the workshops. 75 men in Lubbock, Texas, I'm really proud to say, are doing a workshop on how to be a man. And what they're doing is that there's a whole pilot, what are those things called, PowerPoint, where men come to the workshop and talk. You can see how technologically illiterate and scary I am, but I'm trying with apps. Just saying it, I feel so. Anyway, they are doing these workshops all around the world this year, and then they're going to send in all these results they've had and stories, and then they're going to be put together by men, and they're going to be made into a play. And then next year, it'll go out with the V-Day movement to all the thousands of places, and men will perform this play on 10 Ways to Be a Man. And we'll probably have a PSA campaign, and we'll have a whole thing about men celebrating women and what it looks like. And that's all being generated by guys, So I'm not telling men what to do. I have no idea, And also, I don't think men need women telling them what to do. I think if men really care about ending violence against women, they've got to care and they've got to generate this. They've got to be the people moving it. And we were just at a meeting last night where a whole group of men in San Francisco are trying to figure out how to launch V-Men here. It's happening. It's definitely happening. And I think it'll happen more and more. There's so many great guys in the world. And if they would stand up, and say it matters, then a lot of other guys will stand up.
I think part of the, we were at TED last week, and Esther Duflo, who's a phenomenal economist at MIT, French economist, was mentioning that there's a Haiti that occurs, there's so much coverage of Haiti, which is so important to help the people of Haiti right now. And she's saying we need to do this, and yet at the same time, for children who are 0 to 5 years old, there's a Haiti every 8 days
Exactly.
if you're in emerging countries, as well as even in some of the developed countries. And so I think in some ways, like poverty, like violence against women, it's a story that's always been present, to sort of your point. It's always here, and it's always this undercurrent, and it's always there. And so I think that the collaboration of your extraordinary storytelling and those in the world who have those skills to hear and transpose and create that together with our skills of sort of platforms and apps and getting things out there, I think when they combine and others who have other talents to bring will, and men who step up, women who step up will help a lot. I don't know if there's any other questions, otherwise. Eve, it's been incredible to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy. Can I close by reading you one piece from the new book? Okay.
Terrific.
So I'm going to do this tonight for all the girls' cells that live in us. So boys and girls, like the girl in you. And you know, something I've been thinking a lot about lately, violence against women isn't a given. It's not a given. We don't have to live in a world where 1 out of 3 women are beaten or raped. That's a UN statistic. We don't. It's really a determination. We get to change that. But one of the ways I think we change things is by being outrageous and by being emotional and by being passionate and by being difficult, you know, and by people saying things like, oh, there she is again. It doesn't matter. You really have to make a decision whether you want to be admired or liked, right? Admired or liked. And usually people who continue to push the edge aren't liked by everybody. But it doesn't matter, because if you keep going, people get freed because of it. So I want to leave you with that, and I'm gonna do I'm an emotional creature, because I'm just feeling that way today.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is for all of you. I love being a girl. I can feel what you're feeling as you're feeling it inside the feeling before. I am an emotional creature. Things do not come to me as intellectual theories or hard-pressed ideas. They pulse through my organs and legs and burn up my ears. Oh, I know when your girlfriend's really pissed off, even though she appears to give you what you want. I know when a storm is coming. I can feel the invisible stirrings in the air. I can tell you he won't call back. It's a vibe I share. I am an emotional creature. I love that I do not take things lightly. Everything is intense to me. The way I walk in the street, the way my mama wakes me up, the way I hear bad news, the way it's unbearable when I lose. I am an emotional creature. I am connected to everything and everyone. I was born like that. Don't you say all negative that it's a teenage thing or it's only because I'm a girl. These feelings make me better. They make me present. They make me ready. They make me strong. I am an emotional creature. I am connected to everything. There's a particular way of knowing. It's like the older women somehow forgot. I rejoice that it's still in my body. I know when the coconut's about to fall. I know we have pushed the earth too far. I know my father isn't coming back and that no one's prepared for the fire. I know that lipstick means more than show and boys feel super insecure and terrorists are made, not born. I know that one kiss can take away all my decision-making ability. And you know what? Sometimes it should. This is not extreme. It's a girl thing, what we would all be if the big door inside us flew open. Don't tell me not to cry, to calm it down, not to be so extreme, to be reasonable. I am an emotional creature. It's how the earth got made. It's how the wind continues to pollinate. You don't tell the Atlantic Ocean to behave. I am an emotional creature. Why would you want to shut me down or turn me off? I am your remaining memory. I am connecting you to your source. Nothing's been diluted. Nothing's leaked out. I can take you back. I love that I can feel the inside of the feelings in you. Even if they stop my life, even if it hurts too much, even if it breaks my heart, it makes me responsible. I am an emotional, devotional, incantational, roller coasteral creature. And I love, hear me, I love being a girl.
Woo! Eve Ensler.
Thank you all.